15 years ago, Stardom held its first show at Shinkiba First Ring. And back then, no one knew just how big this company would become. Over the years, Stardom has given us unforgettable matches, iconic wrestlers, and moments that stayed with us after the bell rings and the show ends. But for me, Stardom is more than just wrestling. It's personal. It's a promotion that shaped how I see wrestling and why I love wrestling how I do right now, and why I do things like, especially this video, like content and everything like that. And today isn't just about celebrating 15 years of Stardom, it's about celebrating what Stardom means to us. Over the course of this video, myself and multiple special guests will share our memories, our favorite moments, and the impact this women's promotion has had on our life as fans. This is the video for Stardom's 15th anniversary. Let's celebrate this glorious day together. I've been a fan of this company ever since the pandemic 2020. I have heard around 2020 from this promotion, around this Cinderella when they held it in front of like 0 people. I watched a couple of matches, but the first real show, the first full show I've watched was the pay-per-view in October of 2020, which was Yokohama Cinderella in the Yokohama Budokan, which had the fantastic main event match between Mayu Iwatani and Shuri for the World of Stardom Championship, as well as so many angles, because it was like really a big thing back then, this very show. Like we had the debut of Mina Shirakawa and Natsupoi. We had the heel turn of Konami to end Tokyo Cyber Squad, as well as, of course, Shuri announcing in the main event that she is going to sign full-time with the company. And, for example, one of the few matches that we had between Julia and Tam Nakano in 2020. For me, this show just felt like a complete different world. I'm a person that, even back then, more, of course, I just pretty much know every promotion, but I'm a person, I'm like, I don't need any reason to watch a company. I just see it. I'm like, okay, I have time. Let's check it out. And that's pretty much how I found out about Stardom. It was like, okay, I have nothing to watch. I've watched every G1 show, I believe it was, or every New Japan show around the time. AWW doesn't matter. I watched that. So, okay, I have time. Let's check out something new. And that's how I came to this very show. And from the moment I tuned in, I was just totally hooked. The opening match that was between Azumi and Starlight Kid, of course, 2 young wrestlers back then. I think Azumi was like 18 or so, and Starlight Kid was like 19, around that period of time. And they went just at a pace that was insane, like the typical high-speed style offense and everything like that. And for me, this was something completely new, because I have never seen this high-speed style before, especially from Stardom wrestlers, and seeing them who are just at that point like a year or 2 older than me, doing this insane amount of action in such a short period of time was just mind-blowing to me. That continued, of course, later on with the top matches. I think the drama in between the Oedo Tai and Tokyo Cyber Squad matches with the heel turn and everything like that, with, of course, I knew about Hana Kimura, just got me from the first place. The Goddess of Stardom title match, which we'll be talking about later when I talk about Micah a little bit, hooked me. And the top 2 matches were just great. The Julia and Tam Nakano match was just physical, all-out insanity. And from then on, I was watching, it was like, does Julia hate Tam Nakano for real? Like, these 2 wrestlers especially were just able to convey so good, okay, we hate each other, to a point where I was like watching it for the first time. Is there like literally heat? Like, I never watched New Japan before. I watched other Japanese companies for a long time, but I was like, holy hell, this feels personal. And I mean this in a very good way. And the main event, of course, between Shuri and Mayu Iwatani, I don't think this is their best match in comparison to what we have gotten in 2024 and 2025. But this was just a match that completely hooked me from an in-ring perspective, because it was like, yeah, these women can not only wrestle really great and also can look like stars, but it can also put on a big time feeling main event. And from that on, I was just into Stardom. I wanted to see everything from this company and just watch it. And I haven't looked back since. It's my 6th year as a Stardom fan, 2026 it is, and I've watched every single show ever since this very show. I watched the GP in 2020 back, and I watched the 2 shows back, and I watched every single show ever since that date. Like, and it is a lot of shows. I think if you combined alone the shows from 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, I think you're all at like 600-ish shows that I've watched ever since. And of course, it feels like kind of an obligation now. Okay, I'm going to watch this, but I never felt like over a bigger period of time that I'm wasting my time watching all these Stardom shows. Stardom at this point is kind of part of my weekly routine. Even like, I know, okay, Stardom shows come out. Okay, I'm going to watch them. So I have watched them. And there's always something about Stardom that will hook you on these 2 shows. Of course, with most, it's just funny little 8-man tags where you have these little bits, but these little bits and these little story parts that you're getting in these backstage promos that are helping you to understand a bigger picture of what they are trying to tell. A big example for that is the recent story, or like the current story when this video is coming out, between Moika and Hanako, where you just need to watch these house shows and these backstage promos, and you're getting just a little bit of details that will make whatever they are doing a month later a bit more sense. For example, that with Mike and Hanako here, it was like, you gotta pay focus on the promos shortly after Michael comes back. I think it was the tag league, especially the tag league fun, especially where he came back, and she was cutting this like promo on them. Yeah, you all fucking suck, pretty much. Well, not of course as wording, but you get my point. And then they did the Eden XSV pose and everything, and you just needed to look at Hanako's face to see, okay, something is off. And at that point, it was like, I was pointing this out to a friend. I was like, okay, what are you doing here? Like, is she just exhausted? But a month later, things turn out to make sense when she cut the promo being, yeah, like, you are pretty much a hypocrite. And I was like, these are these little things that make these house shows worth watching for me. And this is why I still watch every single house show to this day. Yes, people can call me an hardcore fan, whatever, for that. I don't care. It's definitely, I would never recommend anyone this. I think you will be super fine if you just follow it the way you're doing right now, like, or like a casual that's watching the bigger shows and some certain house show matches, or if it's on live, okay, I'm tuning in. You will get most of the storylines by promos and everything like that. But for me, it helps to understand just the little things, and that is why I just enjoy watching the whole shows. And in 6 years of Stardom, things have really, really, really changed everything for me. I said it in the intro. I don't think I would have do content creation like YouTube, like for recipes, for example. I wouldn't have done any interviews with any wrestlers if it wasn't for Stardom, because Stardom gave me a creative way to just show, okay, what I can do. And I'm more than happy, personally, really more than happy that I found out about Stardom. I think it changed my life for the better. And this is just means so much to me, this company. Because like I said, it's pretty much part of my weekly routine now. And I have gotten so many cool friends because I've interacted with them about Stardom. like daily at this point. And I have been talking about, okay, what could happen in storyline, or I'm going back to all the matches and everything, talk with them about it. There's like so many people I just know about, okay, I'm giving my Stardom Tech series spot to that, and then just discussions got start about it. And over time, it goes into DMs, and then literally personal friendships come out of it. Like pretty much all the people I'm somewhat close with on social media now are because of Stardom, or at least the majority of them. And I'm really thankful for that alone, because Stardom opened so many doors for me, not only in a creative way, but also for me in a personal way with that. So Stardom pretty much, I can say it like that, it changed my life. And that is exactly why I'm doing this video, to show my love for Stardom in a more emotional video. And over time, of course, I watched back a lot of older shows, a lot of older matches. I wouldn't say I've seen everything. I think that is straight up impossible. Well, at least everything that's available is just straight up impossible timing-wise. But I would say over the 6 years, I've seen so much Stardom. And I think the hours I've invested into this product, into this company, is so much that people would call me insane if I would break it down in numbers. And over this time, to go from a more personal perspective to overall talking about Stardom, Stardom has developed so much. If we just look at the very first show of Stardom, which was the birth of Nova in Shinkiba First Ring, this was pretty much the beginning of Stardom. And you had coming into this a lot of rookies, like you had Arisa Hoshiki debuting on the show, Mayu Iwatani debuting on the show, Yoko Bito debuting on the show, Yoshiko debuting on the show, and so many more. And the big two names this promotion was pretty much built around. Well, three. You can name Natsuki Taiyo as well, where of course Nanae Takahashi, who at that point was a bigger freelance name, the last red belt champion in All Japan women's history, and pretty much the star that made Stardom what it is in the first 2 or 3 years, with Yuzuki Aikawa, who was a model and an actor back then, and she was pretty much the big signing that Rossy Ogawa made back then. Without Yuzuki Aikawa, Stardom would have failed in the first 2 years. And she was the biggest draw in this company. And she was not only the biggest draw in the company, but she was also the perfect first ace that Stardom Curtis asked for. Her matches were incredible. You gotta see her. If you haven't seen Yuzuki Aikawa, outside of her match that she had on the last Hurricane Ultra, which was also a great match, where she looked great in her comeback, you need to go back to watch her past matches. Her matches with the likes of Meiko Satomura, for example. Her matches with young Mayu Iwatani, with young Yoshiko, with young Arisa Hoshiki. She has looked so good from early on and was a perfect wrestler to lead this company in the first era. And Stardom back then was a very small company, mostly held shows in front of a couple of 100 people, mostly in Shinkiba First Ring. Like, back then, Joshi Wrestling was pretty much in a rough spot. You gotta mention this here. Like, Hurricane Hall shows in Stardom, or like for Stardom or other companies, were really rare. Like, in the first year, Stardom had one single company, which was the Nanae Takahashi 15th anniversary show, where she won the main event and won the World of Stardom Championship to become the inaugural World of Stardom champion. That was the only Hurricane Hall show that they had in 2011, to having like 3 or 4 in 2012 and 2013. And it was pretty much still, at that point, you could argue, okay, they're likely the biggest Joshi company in the world. Because Joshi at that point was on a pretty low after the everything that went down with Guy Japan, with all Japan women closing, all of that. Like, we had a literal dog age. It's called the dog age for a reason. People weren't interested in Joshi wrestling. And like, it was pretty much wrestling in front of a couple of hundred fans and hoping to find some way to get some nostalgia in by booking these old Japan women talents that are pretty much already either aged out in terms of how they are in the ring, or just hoping to bring them back for one night returns to make some stars with them. And Stardom had kind of that with Nanae Takahashi on top, but also had Yusuke Aikawa, who pretty much, I think, made this company work. I don't think this company would have worked without Aikawa, and the perfect example is just to see how these first 2 years are built around her. And when she left the company, which started a new era, there was a lot of talk about, okay, is Stardom going to work without Yusuke Aikawa? It was like the biggest star in the company, the biggest draw in the company was just gone overnight, pretty much. And Rossi, Ogawa, and the rest of the company needed to figure out, okay, what is next? What is next for Stardom after Yusuke Aikawa? And on that very same day, Yusuke Aikawa retired in Sumo Hall. In the match right before, we had Io Shirai winning the World of Stardom Championship off a female, Jessie Gabbard, and started off her 460 plus day long run with the red belt, where she became the ace of Stardom, where she slowly developed into the wrestler that many people know later on as Io Sky. And Rossi, and that is something I need to credit him for, Rossi and Stardom has made it a very clear way to say, okay, we are always going to prepare for the future. And when Yusuke Aikawa left the company and retired, many other companies, especially Joshi companies, but also companies all around the world, would have struggled to make a star. Rossi was always dead set on, okay, I need a backup plan, and a backup plan for the backup plan if our number one option is out for whatever reason, if it's retirement, if it's injury, whatever. He always had a backup plan where he can just plug them into the main event scene and it's going to work. And that is the biggest strength that Stardom has had, because Io Shirai on top was tremendous. You know, she dominated the entire promotion for around 4 to 5 years before she left the company. And it was like, when she left the company, okay, what is going to happen now? Who is going to be the next top girl? And they decided to go with Mayu Iwatani. Of course, it didn't really pay out the way they wanted to with the injury and everything like that. But then they had Kagetsu stepping up. And he had this great run in 2018 where he carried this company as his top heel, and in my opinion, was one of the best heels that this company has ever had. Then we had Mayu Iwatani, of course, having an ace run. And when Mayu slowly lost it, we had slowly lost traction in terms of being on the top of the Stardom. We had other names stepping up. We have Utami having her 400-day reign, Shuri, Julia, Tamakano. And when they slow down, we have Maikon getting the red belt and Saya Kamitani. And when they are going to slow down, we have Azumi, we have Starlight Kid. Stardom is a non-stop high up. They have a non-stop working system where people can replace whoever's above them. No one. It doesn't feel like anywhere in history, outside of maybe right now with Saya Kamitani, did it feel like that the wrestler on top is above the company. It always felt like, okay, whoever's on top is on top, but if something happens, losing them is not going to be the end of the promotion. And this promotion has really survived a lot of shit stuff. I mentioned, of course, Aikawa leaving. I mentioned, of course, Io Shirai leaving, but I also mentioned that there was a time where Kairi Sane left, Kairi Hojo left. The ghastly match between where Nanae Takahashi and Yoshiko left after, and of course, Akira Yasukawa got injured and retired shortly after as well. no company in this world has lost or had so many talents that left the company for various reasons, and they still found a way to not only bounce back with new talents, but bounce back in a way where the promotion got even bigger. The recent example, of course, is the Marigold Exodus, where Utami Hayashita, a former red belt champion, one of the top stars of the company, Mai Sakurai, a talent that is pretty much plugged in every role that they can put her in, from mid-card tags to sometimes even higher up singles matches, even though, of course, she really got her singles push in Marigold. But she was started to put into the position where she was standing out. I think she was like in the Cinderella final in 2023, for example, and had a good GP run. Mirai, who is a one of Stardom champion, just came off a run, and it was only a matter of time for many fans were like, okay, she's now moving up to the red belt scene. She left. Yuzuki, who at that point was seen as the super rookie in Stardom, a wrestler that legitimately everyone thought, okay, she's going to make the jump to the red belt scene pretty quickly, or the white belt scene, red belt scene pretty quickly. We also had, of course, a year later, Mayu Iwatani leaving, who is the face of Stardom. If it isn't Io Shirai, it's Mayu Iwatani if you think about Stardom first. She also left the company. Of course, Ms. Rossio, the owner itself, left the company. And so many people more left the company over time. But Stardom always recovered, always found a way to bounce back and get even bigger. And I think you just gotta applaud to them for that, because that just tells you that this roster is just awesome. And this roster can survive everything because they believe that they can survive it. And that is exactly why they are doing it. The company is so stacked with so many different fantastic wrestlers. I mean, if you just go look over it, what names we had on this last Korakuen Hall show. In the main event with Konami and Rina, we had Natsuboy, Starlight Kid, Sayaka Kurara, Aya Sakura, Natsuko Tora, Ruaka, Hanan, Saida, Meisara, Azumi, Miwa Masaki, Hina. The list can go on and on. Sarayano, Maika, Suzuki, Hazuki, Shuri. I can name like 25 different wrestlers more. This roster is by far the most stacked roster I've ever seen in pro wrestling, and that is exactly why they can bounce back from it. Speaking of it, the next era after the Io Shirai era, of course, was the big transitional era where we had Kagetsu as champion and Mayu Iwatani. I said it that was a bit before my time, but it was the time I watched the most back, because these big matches just hit like nothing else. Kagetsu's run as world champion was insane. He was so good in his heel role, and he just filled the space of, okay, we need a main eventer who can carry this company right now so to perfection with his style, with the way he portrayed himself as a character, where he was this overarching heel, but also not too serious, like with the dances and everything like that with Oedotai. And he worked so well in this company that I think you just gotta give it to him and gotta applaud him what he did during that time. And then, of course, we had the Bushiroad era that pretty much started in 2019 when it was officially announced that Bushiroad is going to buy Stardom. And I remember asking people how the feeling were when this happened, and people were mixed about it, because Stardom went from being owned by Rossi Ogawa to being part of New Japan, pretty much, and being part of Bushiroad. And things are going to change automatically with that. And we have seen that. I think if you're watching a show in 2019, and then right after watch a show even in 2021, I would say, it's a totally different promotion. New signings, the show structure changed. I think it's more focused, like the in-ring style even changed. I don't think if you're watching a main event from 2018, 2019 with Mayu Iwatani and Kagetsu, you will get a totally different match if you tune into a match of 2021 Utami Hayashita. And it's not just the wrestler, it feels like that the match layout's completely changed. And then we head into the pandemic. And I think I speak for many people who are listening to this. The pandemic is likely the place a lot of us started to watch wrestling. And the pandemic started off with especially Julia being on the rise and Donna Del Mondo being the big faction around there. And Donna Del Mondo is like pretty much the faction for many, together with the Cosmic Angels, that they think about. I say, okay, when I started to watch Stardom, this promotion and this stable was on top, and it was likely either one of the Cosmic Angels, with Tam Nakano being in the Persian 2020-2021, or it is Julia. And these two factions were all over the screens, pretty much. They were pretty much in every big spot. Every title you can imagine was either held by one of them or challenged by one of them. And their rivalry, I think, hooked so many people. I mentioned on the first show that I watched that it was one of the Julia and Tam Nakano matches in 2020. And this was pretty much just a couple of months before the big match in Nippon Budokan. And this show, the 10th anniversary show Nippon Budokan, is still to this day one of my favorite Stardom shows of all time. To get to that, where you had this big hair versus hair match between Julia and Tam Nakano, the fantastic Sayaka Mitani versus Utami Hayashita match. I love the Mayutama Iwatani versus Yoshiko match. So many matches that are just enjoyable and great to watch, in my opinion, that this show kind of felt like the first real thing of Bushiroad is now in the promotion. It's now a Bushiroad promotion, because before Bushiroad, and yes, Stardom ran Korakuen a lot before Bushiroad, but Nippon Budokan was a statement, and it felt like, of course, it was partly because of the pandemic, but I felt like here, for the first time, okay, this is Bushiroad Stardom. We are aiming for the top, not only in women's pro wrestling, but in the entire world, and they never look back from it. With Julia and Tam Nakano in the first 3 years at the top baby faces, top faces of the company, where they pretty much were constantly in the focus, first with the white belt and later with the red belt. In between, you also had Shuri and Utami Hayashita, and these four wrestlers, I would say, are the core and the top, together with Mayu Iwatani and Sayaka Mitani, the top of Stardom between 2021 and 2023, which I would consider as its own era, which is, in my opinion, Bushiroad era #1. We will come to Bushiroad era #2 later. And these 2 years, I would say, were my favorite part about Stardom so far from what I've seen, simply because everything clicked for me. I was new in the product, so I was pretty much still, wow, how good is this? But also just the vibes were on another level. You were able to see so many fantastic matches, all these roster changes over time with new wrestlers coming in and then developing. A lot of wrestlers came into their own over that period, where you were like, okay, this is so cool, with the golden generation built around Utami Hayashita, Sayaka Mitani, Maika, Himeka, and Saida, all getting these big spots. And it always felt like this promotion is on fire, and this promotion is going to carry women's wrestling to a bigger heights. They also got matches in 2020, 2021, and 2022, I believe, as well, on Wrestle Kingdom shows, even though it was just a pre-show. But seeing women wrestle in a pre-show of Wrestle Kingdom, even though we never saw the match itself, but just reading about it, is just a awesome thing. And it was unimaginable years before. And now, if you go back 5 years later, real quick, we're talking about them holding their own Tokyo Dome show in the future. Back then, in 2021, where this 2020, 21, when it first happened, it was like, cool. This is like the only time they are going to wrestle in Tokyo, right? To see all of this develop into them holding their first sumo hall shows, a double-header sumo hall in 2022, for example, and the rise of all these different wrestlers from the white belt scene to red belt scene, with of course Julia and Tam Nakano being the big two. I think their rivalry shaped a lot of fandoms in Stardom. Same for the rivalry between Shuri and Utami Hayashita, who had this fantastic match in 2021 in June, I believe it was, where they delivered this 43-minute double KO match that got the first 5-star match of Melter for a women's match in over 2 decades. They got so many new fans in, and these two feuds between Shuri and Utami and Tam Nakano and Julia happening around the same time and having the peak in the exact same year, shortly after another, was like insane to watch at the point. I think that was like the peak for me in terms of like pure how I'm impressed with what they are doing. And that of course went on with all these different sumo hall shows and all these different eras slowly until the next peak in 2023, where we had also Can't Queen them in front of over 5,500 fans in Yokohama Arena, which was, in my opinion, the end of the first Bushiroad era, where you had this tremendous white belt match between Mina Sharkawa, who ends the run of Sayaka Mitani, the Shuri vs. Chihiro Hashimoto match, Mercedes Moné wrestling in Stardom, dropping the IWGP Women's title to Mayu Iwatani, and in main event, of course, Tam Nakano and Julia battling one last time for a belt here in the main event, where they had a tremendous outing with Tam Nakano going over, winning the red belt and ending the Julia run early, which was just peak. This show is just peak. I think there's only one show in Stardom history that can rival it in terms of vibes, in terms of match quality, in terms of everything. But man, this show is just amazing. I think this is one of the shows I would recommend people to watch from the beginning to the end. You will be mind blown if you haven't seen this show. It's incredible. From the first match between Meisera and Starlight Kid against Azumi Meisuruga, to the Himeka retirement match, to the fantastic Awesome Stardom title match with Kari, Natsuko, and Soriano winning the belt from Prominent, and of course the top four, just incredible. But as good as the show was, and this is what I want to talk about, it was also the end of the first Bushiroad era with everything that happened. Backstage pretty much getting known shortly after, and not only getting known via Dave Meltzer or via someone saying it, but also in the media saying it, but also the wrestlers making it very clear. Like by the end of the GP in 2023, we had, for example, Julia saying out loud, okay, what happened? Rossi Ogawa spoke out, and a lot of other wrestlers talked about, hey, look, this can't continue. And that ended then with the president at that time getting fired and Taro Okada getting the position. And then eventually led to Rossi Ogawa leaving the company to Full Marigold. And that is where I would say the second Bushiroad era started, at Dream Queen in 2023, with Maika winning the red belt and the Taro Okada booking starting to be in effect there, with Rossi slowly fading out and then getting released from his contract in February 2024. And the 2024 to now 2026 era of Stardom has been, for me, creatively up and down, but in terms of a pure success, this company has grown to a level where nobody expected it. This company is now selling over 100,000 tickets per year. This is incredible. Only New Japan can do this right now in Japan. And New Japan is selling over 250,000 tickets. So Stardom has developed under the Bushiroad era to the clear number one Joshi company, but also the clear number two company in the entire country. And they can be super happy for that. And of course, if we talk about the Bushiroad 2 era, we need to talk about Sayaka Mitani, as she is pretty much the face of it. She, Maika, and I would say maybe Starlight Kid are like the faces of the new era of Stardom. And Sayaka Mitani is, of course, far beyond anyone there. I would say, and I mentioned this earlier, she is the first wrestler who really feels like bigger than Stardom in terms of her star power, because what she has been doing is insane. Like, she was in the main event of the most successful Stardom show of all time. She was in the main event of the second most successful Stardom show of all time. She was one of the wrestlers that was announced early to wrestle in the Wrestle Kingdom 20 event, together with Aaron Wolf's big debut in Hiroshi Tanahashi's final match. Those three names are announced: Sayaka Mitani, Aaron Wolf, and Hiroshi Tanahashi. That should say everything. And of course, what led Sayaka Mitani to be in that spot is something that Toru Okada has done a lot. And that is just riskier booking choices and doing stuff that people wouldn't do in his role. Instead of playing safe, he's a booker that takes risks a lot. And I think the Sayaka Mitani heel turn was a big risk at the time. Queen's Quest was one of the most over factions that Stardom has had ever. This goes back to the era with Momo Watanabe, with Io Shirai, to the era of Utami Hayashida. And when all of them left, Sayaka Mitani was kind of like in a role where you would expect her to be the next Queen's Quest leader. But instead, they did something I didn't expect him to do, and that is just straight up killing Queen's Quest. And Sayaka Mitani turns heel. Sayaka Mitani, at that point, if you haven't seen her back then, she was the most pure baby face that I have had that wasn't in the Cosmic Angels. It was mind-blowing back then to even think about that they are turning Sayaka Mitani heel. And because it was such a big character switch for her as well, but look how it turned out. And that is the perfect example of how sometimes you need to take risk, and sometimes it's not going to work in the first couple of shows, because Sayaka Mitani, shortly after heel turn, was rough to watch. I think the GP especially was not really good, at the group stage at least, until the quarterfinal against Starlight Kid in Shinjuku Face. That was the very first time it felt like the characters clicking, where it felt like she was connecting with the crowd in a little bit, and it felt like for the first time there, for the very first time, it felt like there, okay, she believes in the character she's portraying, and she didn't look back from it. And what we have gotten since was just astonishing. The entire feud with Tam Nakano, which I did a whole video about, with the tremendous angles that it did, with all the stuff where they got really creative to build up the matches, which peaked then at Also Con Queen 2025, at the biggest Stardom show of all time, in front of so many people that is unbelievable to say. Over 7,500 people. They had this big career match to end the title, to end the career of Tam Nakano. And that is a match and a memory that will always be in my mind personally, because you will just see this last shot where they both look up in the sky and Tam Nakano just points at the shooting star, which was a callback, of course, to the Arisa Hoshiki promo that they had as Stream Shine, and was like, This is it. And at that moment, it was not only the end of Tomokanos career, but also it felt like the last moment Saya Kamitani needed to go from the top of Stardom to another level, where she shortly after was on the Love It show, which was a national TV morning show where she got pretty famous of, and Stardom ever since has gotten a hype, especially around Saya Kamitani, that I don't think anyone saw ever coming, especially how it played out. But it's a perfect example of what I mean with Taro Okada. Just sometimes the signings of where like, really? Should he be doing that? And it just works out great. Another example of that, for example, is Konami winning the white belt when she did. At that point, it was like, Konami winning the white belt in 2025? And I'm not a big Konami fan. And now I sit here and she makes a white belt division with Saida, with Rina, with Ami Sourei, who are three names who you could have never expected to be in this kind of spot a year ago. Well, with Rina, it's of course being because she was so young. With Ami and Ida being like, okay, they were stuck in a weird mid-card role. And Konami, who has been seen as just a wrestler who kind of phones in, found a new level of motivation under this and just is shining and making every opponent that she has look really good. And this Konami run is working out great. And it feels like the Taro Okada as a booker has kind of the hand to make risky decisions, but make them in a way where he has the confidence in the wrestlers that they turn out to be great. With, of course, Saya Kamitani being the biggest success that he has had. And I think that it's going to be tough to top that because Saya Kamitani is on a level right now in terms of her popularity where you just gotta say, okay, if I book this, like I think nearly every booker that ever existed could have booked this and would have said, yeah, this is the biggest success I've ever had as a booker. And that is the level we are talking about here. And Saya Kamitani, of course, is the top of Stardom wrestler, is a wrestler you need to be talking about when we are talking about the current era of Stardom. She's still the World of Stardom champion. She has had the belt for over a year. And it doesn't seem like she's going to lose the belt anytime soon. And it's going to be interesting heading into the next couple of years to look a bit forward to who are the names that are going to replace her, because she's now on top of the world. She is now the top of Stardom. But what is next? And that is something Stardom's going to figure out. Am I scared about it? No, because like I said, there's no promotion in the world right now that can replace leaving wrestlers or can replace wrestlers that are slowing down better. Way, way better than Stardom. And I think this is always going to be the biggest strength. And whoever is going to follow up Saya Kamitani, of course, has big shoes to fill. But it will also lead to a new era where, if we believe in how Stardom has worked in the past 15 years, will lead to even bigger things for the company. A topic that has been brought up a lot, if we're talking about what happens next for Stardom and what will happen next in the next couple of years, is the Tokyo Dome. And I think if you look at the shows that Stardom has ran over the past couple of years, Sumo Hold, Nippon Budokan, Yokohama Arena, the Tokyo Dome is the next level. And to me, all the talk, especially from Saya Kamitani, but also other wrestlers bringing it up to say, hey, look, we want to bring women's wrestling into the Tokyo Dome, just tells you that the roster is really motivated for the next couple of years to make this possible, to bring Stardom to even bigger heights and making history. And alone for that fact, I'm not worried about Stardom's future. I'm never going to be worried about Stardom's future because we have seen they have survived so many things. It's only a matter of time until the eventual next big thing happens where a wrestler leaves or wrestler retires that is going to lead to the discussion, oh my god, what is going to happen with Stardom? And the answer, we can take this quote and likely put it out 25 times in the next 10 years. They will find a solution and they will be stronger than ever. I'm pretty certain about this. Even in a world post Saya Kamitani, even in a world post whoever comes after Saya Kamitani, a lot needs to go wrong for the working system that Stardom has established to fail. One or two things I want to mention is some of the wrestlers that have impacted my fandom outside of Micah. And I want to first, and this is a bit of an off topic, and I know it's a difficult topic, I want to quickly talk about Hana Kimura. And I never talked about Hana Kimura on air, so it's going to be very tough for me to find the right words. So I apologize if I didn't find the right words and it comes off silly. Hana Kimura's death in 2020 was a big shock. I knew about it, even though I have never seen a full Stardom show. I watched like a couple of matches. I watched Io Shirai vs. Mayu Iwatani series and all of that, but I never watched like full shows until October 2020, where she was already gone. But you notice to this very day what Hana Kimura means to Stardom. She is a flower that is always above everything that happens in Stardom. You're constantly seeing people calling back to her with Rena, for example, in the latest Hurricane Hall show, of course, doing the Tiger Lily, the dropkick into the package pile driver combination, or Konami talking about backstage promo how her match against Rena felt very similar to her match against Hana Kimura in the 5-star GB final in 2019. And Hana Kimura, God bless her soul, to this day, it always feels like that she is just part of whatever is going on, even if she's not there anymore, sadly. And it's tragic what happened to her. You can really say this. It's just tragic. It always feels like that she is right there with us. She is still part of Stardom. She's still the heart of Stardom in one way. And it's a big what if, what could have happened if she didn't tragically pass away in 2020. Because she was meant to be one of the big stars of this era. She would have been right up there with Nutami. She would have been right up there with Mayu Iwatani. She would have been right up there with Shuri, Julian, Tam Nakano, Saya Kamitani. And she loved wrestling so much that it would have been just awesome to see how she would have done. But, man, it's just sad to see. And I think Hana Kimura really means a lot to not only my Stardom fandom, as I went back and watched all of her matches, especially all of the big matches that I really enjoy. I loved her storyline with Kagetsu. I loved her matches with pretty much everyone that she faced in these big time situations. And it was only a matter of time until she wins one of the top 2 belts. It's always going to be rough to imagine what could happen, what could have been, and anything like that. And I don't want that. I think it's just important to talk about her in such an important video because she is part of this promotion, and she always will be, and she always will be remembered as one of the most fun wrestlers to ever watch in this company. And I think she, especially with her time in RH, was a wrestler that made it possible that a lot of wrestlers, or like a lot of, not just wrestlers, but a lot of fans who have maybe never watched about Stardom, maybe tune in to one of the shows. I know a lot of fans who have watched because of Hana Kimura, Kagetsu, Hazuki, Mayu Iwatani being in these RH shows. So I can only say for Hana Kimura, rest in peace. We will always remember you. Thank you for everything that you did for Stardom, for your even if it wasn't a long time you were in this company from like 2016 on. I think you changed this promotion forever, and your spirit and your heart is always going to be carried by whoever is in this company. And I can just say thank you, and I hope you rest well. Man, this was way tougher than I thought to talk about Hana Kimura. But to move on, and it's going to be rough now. Outside of them, I think a wrestler I want to quickly shout out is Momo Watanabe, who next to Kagetsu and Iwatani really carried this era post Io Shirai between 2018 and 2019. Her and Arisa Hoshiki had two of the best white belt runs I've ever seen. And people need to go and watch back these matches because Momo Watanabe, I said this before. I think if people would watch, if Rossi Ogawa or Taro Okada or whoever would book Momo Watanabe how Rossi booked her in 2018, 2019 now, fans would be frustrated. The way she not only talked down all of our favorite wrestlers, but also just destroyed them after in the incredible bouts was just awesome to watch. She was a legitimately ace candidate for a long time. Her white belt run was fantastic. And she dropped it at the right time to Arisa Hoshiki, who was this fun personality who wasn't in Stardom for a long time. Of course, was part of the 2011 generation, then retired 2012, and then came back in 2018 and retired again 2020. She wasn't there for a long time. I think she has a combined maybe 2 years in the ring, maybe 3 years in terms of months that she competed in. And she made such a big impact with her white belt run. I think especially the match against Tom Nakano is the one that stands out here, but also the match against Jungle Kiona at the show in 2019 in August was just amazing. These are the wrestlers that carried a lot of Stardom. Also going back, Yoko Bito, being a wrestler that has done so much for this company in her time, even though she never liked to stand out ace talent like Io was and everything like that. She put in so much effort. Aki Yasukawa and Yoshiko, another two wrestlers, of course, they had this big, well, you can even say match, like this big fight that kind of made them both leave the companies sooner or later as a result of it. Even though with Act it was another injury that came later, but her way down started with that. They also, especially in 2013, 2014, 2015, did a lot for this company. And even if we go to nowadays, Utami, all of them, there's so many wrestlers that did so much for this company that you're just gonna shout out. And it's more than just the iconic Mayutani, Yuzuki Aikawa, Io Shirai, Kami Hojo, Sayaka Mitani, of course, Tom Nakano, Judah. There are so many wrestlers that deserve so many credit for what they have been doing, and they deserve it all. Now we are coming to the most difficult part to me to talk about. Not because it's like tough to mention it or anything like that, but just it's tough for me to find the right words to describe it. And I think everyone who knows me and everyone who follows me on social media, here on YouTube, on Twitter, or wherever, knows my fandom for Maika. She's by far my favorite wrestler in the company, by far my favorite wrestler in the entire world. And there's no wrestler I ride on the hill that she's the greatest, that I adore everything she does inside the ring and how much I hold her close to my fandom. And this is always like the thing with me. I always choose like one favorite and ride with them till the end. In WWE, even though my fandom in WWE kind of died in the last couple of years, it was at the beginning Kevin Owens when I started to watch wrestling. When I started to get into New Japan, it was Zack Sabre Jr. And when I started to watch Stardom in 2020, where the big Donna De Mondo era pretty much started, after where I think it was the show where Nutsport joined, where I really started to pay attention. And there was a tag title match on the very show. A match that At that point, to me, it didn't seem like a big thing, but looking back to it, it was like a pretty major match. It was the Queen's Quest duo of Sayaka Mitani and Utami Hayashida defeating Donna de Mondo's Himeka Maika in a Goddess of Stardom title match. And that is when I first saw Maika wrestle and truly paid attention to her. And I fell in love on day one. Her wrestling is just so me. Maybe it's also part of I was a big Zack Sabre Jr. guy and I loved the entire Takamichi Noko thing and everything like that. And Maika obviously is the Takamichi Noko dojo trainee in Stardom. It was definitely part of that as well. But I just saw her. I saw her wrestle, and I saw this what later became the golden generation of Stardom facing off in this big tag team title match, and it just was like, yeah, this is my favorite, and I rock with her now. And this is kind of like silly how my fandom with Maika started, and it developed into her pretty much being my brand now. I think it's tough to think about myself for people without thinking, oh yeah, he's the guy who likes Maika. And that is something just shows me, okay, I've been following her now for 6 whole years nearly. And I've been watching pretty much every match I can find of her. There's like one match I couldn't find of her, which was on a Wakatsukiyama Peru show that is just not available because she didn't tape it. It was like a full-blown Peps match with Umizaki, with Amisore and everything like that. I was like, dude, this is the most Peps match possible, and this is not available. I was like pretty mad because Umizaki is, of course, one of my favorite indie wrestler, indie Joshi wrestler out there. And them teaming to it, I was like, oh yeah, this will never happen. Then it happened, and I just could watch it. I was like pissed. I want to see every Maika match that I can. I've watched every Maika match that I've found online. Doesn't matter if it's in JTO. It doesn't matter if it's in front of like 10 people. Doesn't matter if it's in front of 7,500 people. I want to see them all because Maika means so much to me as a wrestler and so much to me and to my fandom. And seeing her career develop over time in Stardom was always a cool thing for me. Maika's run in Stardom wasn't always like how it seemed like, okay, she's on the top of the world. She was always up and down, up and down. I mean, when I started to really pay attention, she was already the double champion with the Future of Stardom title as well as the Artist of Stardom championship together with Julia and Shuri in the first DDM run that she had. She dropped them both and then won the Goddess of Stardom title together with Himeka as Mahime in this great Kirk and Hall match against B. Priestley and Konami. And shortly before, she challenged for the World of Stardom Championship against Utami Hayashida for the first time. And I remember, there was a time, you gotta remember this. If you didn't watch Stardom back then, you maybe didn't know this, but it was always VOD. That means if you didn't want to get spoiled, you need to be off social media. I was at points like 6 or 7 days not on social media to be unspoiled for a World of Stardom title match to see, okay, can Maika pull this off? I knew she had no chance, but Dylan is going to say this later in his part. Wrestling gotta make you feel things, and for me, supporting Maika, even though I knew, okay, she's not going to win, and then just seeing her and trying to rally behind her from at home just made me feel things, and that is what wrestling should be all about in the end. And seeing Maika then hold the tag belt, and I really liked the Mahime run where they had the cool Budokan defense against Tora and Kashima in the pre-show, where she then got the Michinoko Driver 2. To the big pay-per-view main event where she and Himeka lost the tag belts and to Julia and Shuri in a match where I thought Maika had one of the best career performances still. The bump she has took and the way she bumped for Julia and Shuri and her comebacks were just tremendous. I adored this match. I think this is still one of the best started tag team matches I've ever seen. And When it was over, I was truly pissed. I was truly pissed that Julia and Sherry won the belts. And that goes back to wrestling needs to make you feel things. Of course, sometimes you're just mad at things. I wanted to see this Mahima run continue. And it's crazy considering Micah has been such a tremendous tag team worker. It doesn't matter if it's with Himeka, doesn't matter if it's with Hanako. In my opinion, Micah and Hanako had the best matches of Hanako's career. The matches with Meg Bain, all the random tag team matches that she had with all-star tag team matches, the trios matches that she had with DDM. He's such a great tag team worker, and that her being her only Goddess of Stardom title run always felt weird to me personally, because I feel like there is so much in that. I would love to see a Micah Casino Goddess title run. But to continue my Micah talk, seeing her slowly establish herself from being a cool tag and artist of some title wrestler who occasionally challenges for the world or for the Wonder title, with especially the big one being against Saya Komitani in her hometown Fukuoka, where she had this fantastic entrance. But you always feel like you watched her match, were like, yeah, she's really cool. And you notice that Rossi and Stan were really behind her, but it always was made very clear that she isn't the talent they want to push yet. Utami was always ahead of her. Komitani was always ahead of her. Shuri, Nakano, Julia. I would even argue that until the heel turn, Momo Watanabe was also clearly ahead of her. And even shortly after the heel turn was Momo Watanabe more in bigger spots than her. Starlight Kid as well. But over time, slowly, it felt like something was clicking with Micah. And that really started to get really hard in 2023 when Himeka retired. That match was tremendous. I think the retirement match of Himeka against Micah was one of the emotional matches I've seen. When Micah hit the shoot headbutt while crying and then just hitting the Michinoku driver to pinner was just killing me. And from that moment on, it felt like that something was just clicking with Micah. When she slowly but surely moved away from DDM to form this little sub-group, even though it wasn't anything official, together with Suzuki and Mei Sarah. And they slowly teamed together, and then Meng Bain, of course, getting part of that. That was just so cool to see, and she developed a rivalry with Suzu that has been a thing until literally today. It's still going on as we speak. They are feuding right now over in Stardom. And it was cool because it felt like for the first time, okay, finally something is happening with her. And finally she's moving up the card, because at that point, it truly felt like, for many people, that she's stuck in this upper mid-card role that is never going to hold one of the two belts. I have survived a ton of, oh, she's the Ryoki Goda of Stardom. She's the Jungle Kiana. Whatever I've heard. And when she moved away from DDM, I slowly felt like, okay, we might have a chance to get the belt. I wanted her to win the belt. I wanted her to win it badly. And then the 5-Star GP 2023 came about, where she made it surprisingly to the final with this hot storyline with Suzuki. Of course, we know now that Kamitani was originally meant to win and challenge Tam Nakano for the red belt, but of course she went injured, so they changed plans. And Micah and Suzu was the hardest storyline Stardom had at that point right now, and they decided, hey, look, let's go all in. And this GP final in 2023 emotionally is one of the most up and downs I've had. I wanted her to win so bad. I was like pretty sure in my head that this is her moment. This is her shot to reach the next level. I was sure that she's going to win it. The crowd was so behind her. Maika in 2023, for those who have not seen her, she was by far the most over wrestler in the company. She had a level of momentum heading into this GP final like no other. And after this tremendous match, after this heated match, that kind of was the first step of this rivalry between Suzu and Maika. Maika still lost. And I was devastated. I was literally devastated because I was so sure, okay, this is going to be my time. And I was tweeting about it. I wanted her to win bad. And you notice it in the crowd as well, that the moment the finish hit, the crowd went from white hot to just down. They wanted Maika to win. And I think in that moment, everything changed for her. From she was slowly going up over the GP to that moment hit, and it was like everyone backstage pretty much was like, okay, we need to go all in on her. And then, of course, with the injury of Tam Nakano, things sped up a little bit because the original plan was to take this away. Seemingly that Suzu is going to win the belt from Tam, defends it against Maika at Queendom, defeats Maika at Queendom, and then drops it and also on Queendom 2024 to Maika. Instead, we got, of course, what everyone mentions, that everyone knows, that Maika wins this tremendous one-night tournament wins with Ami Sourei and Momo Watanabe, who Momo Watanabe is also an important rival than Maika had, because back in 2020, Maika's first major singles win in Stardom came over Momo Watanabe when she tapped her out in the GP. And then she used her once again to make it to the sumo main event against Suzu, of course, as a 5-star winner. And we had once again this big rematch of these big rivals with this big storyline. And it was clearly heading into Dream Queen in 2023, where I would argue Stardom was on a creative low, where backstage issues not only happened behind the scenes, but also really visible for us with Julia, Tam Nakano, Rossi, Bari, everyone pretty much conducting interviews about the topic. And then, of course, Toru Okada being introduced. And then all of that led to the big Marigold exodus. Whatever. The hottest thing, and I think the thing that really kept Stardom above everything at this point in time, was the big Maika versus Suzu storyline, and the crowd rallying so behind Maika and wanting to see her finally getting a moment. And I remember watching Dream Queendom live and how we came to that. And when you go back on my Twitter, you will notice that for a long time I was pretty much, oh yeah, she's not winning. I pretty much have given up hope. I was like, okay, they want to strap up Suzu. It makes sense. Suzu won the GP. Suzu was originally meant to win the Red Bull. Of course he will win. And a couple of days before, I kind of got to remember, okay, something is going on. And that is when I started to buy into, okay, Maika's winning. And from then on, I went from hope to, I know she's going to win. I just said, I know she's going to win. And I wanted her to see a win. And I was like tweeting about it. I was like, I think she's going to win. But I wasn't 100% sure, 100% sure that she's going to win based on, okay, and use something. But it was based on, I just had a feeling. And the feeling wasn't wrong. I watched this match. I watched her come out to a great ovation, the crowd being once again fully behind her in a Sumo Hall main event. It was, for me, the peak of my wrestling fandom, seeing this match play out, and then the finish, where she hits the Mecha Riley powerbomb to give one last tribute to her old tag team partner. And then hits the headbutt, hits one Michinoku driver, goes for the second, plants Suzu, And then it was like, okay, she's going for the third. Either Susie counters and Maika's losing, or Maika hits the third one and wins the red belt. And in that moment, everything was slow for me in my head because I was so focused. It was slow motion. And I see her picking up Susie one last time and plant her with a third Michinoku driver. The 3 count hit, and I started to just cry. It was years of following her from pretty much being stuck in this mid-card role, from being a rookie to being stuck in this mid-card role to finally making it out of it. I don't think I will ever experience something like that ever again in pro wrestling. For me, this was my emotional highlight ever. And everyone, and that is also something that comes back to Maika being my brand. Everyone pretty much, they obviously said, we are so happy for Maika, but I got so many DMs from so many people, from friends, from just random mutuals, from just people online who are like, I don't watch Stardom at all, or I just barely watch Stardom, but I know how much this means to you. And I'm happy for you. I'm like, thank you. It felt like that Maika's win made people think about, some people think about, okay, look, Paps is happy, so I'm happy. And that tells me something that I've done something right in my presence online. And I can only say thank you to everyone who, doesn't matter just on this Maika topic, but in general, who has ever reached out to me when I'm not doing well or just asking how I'm doing. It just tells me, hey, look, these people think about me. And I'm someone who mentally is not always strong, especially when I'm stressed out. So seeing, okay, that on, like, not only my friends in real life think about me, but also that I have such an impact on people online that they just think about me when they see Mike winning something is awesome to see. And Maika with the red belt is, for me, the greatest thing that has happened at Stardom. And I don't think this will ever change. I don't think a second run of Maika with the red belt will top the first one, because I love the first run. Not only because it was a good run, but also because for me it was emotionally so important. Because now it's like, yeah, I have my run. I have seen her hold the red belt. I would be okay if she just retires. Well, not really. But I would be okay if she just doesn't win any red belt anymore. It was my goal, or like my big thing. I wanted to see Maika with a singles belt. And her holding red belt was like the crowning moment for me, for my fandom, and I don't think it can get any better. Like, what is bigger than that? Well, the 5-star GP win that we had the year after, of course, in general, because I think the 5-star GP is a bit more protected than the red belt, and it's like the big thing. It's started to win, and Maika won it too. Maika slowly but surely is going down to be one of the most successful kayfabe wrestlers in the entire company. And if you told me that 5 years ago that this would be the case, I would have called you insane. I would have called you insane. Of course, a lot of things needed to happen. Julia needed to leave. Tam Nakano needed to retire. Injuries, whatever. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because what in the end counts is what the accomplishments say. World of Stardom Championess, 3-time Artist of Stardom Championess, Future of Stardom Championess, Goddess of Stardom Championess, 5-star GP winner, Goddess of Stardom Tag League winner in 2023, Cinderella finalist, and whatever, one of the few wrestlers who made it to the GP final twice, together with Yokubito, Utami, and Mowatanabe. Maybe in terms of tournaments, is Mike one of the most successful one in terms of her final appearances. Of course, she has a bad finals record with the Cinderella final loss, with GP final loss, with 2 tag team final losses with the New Year unit competition loss, but doesn't matter. She is in these kind of spots, and this is just insane for me. Maika means so much to my fandom, and I don't think Stardom would be Stardom for me without Maika. I literally would I don't know how I would watch Stardom if it wasn't for Maika. I noticed that, to jump ahead, when she took her break last year, I was really still watching Stardom. I was still watching every show, but the shows, it felt like I had no emotional connection to a wrestler like that, because Michael wasn't there. I was watching these shows. I was watching them from a bit more objective standpoint, a bit more further away, rather than okay, I'm going all in fan investment of that, because the only wrestlers I really care about on a level where I really fully invest into that. Of course, I like a lot of the wrestlers in Stardom roster, but fully invest is in Maika and Rion. And Rion is obviously kind of developed from being a meme with the entire Rion Ages thing to whatever it is now. Like, insane, right? And once Maika came back in December, funny enough, she came back on my birthday on December the 8th. I'm so much more into Stardom from a pure investment standpoint. Of course, I talked about storylines. Of course, I did content. Of course, I cared about the promotion still. But I think everyone who has a favorite wrestler like that will know what I mean with that. I can't imagine Stardom without Maika for me. I can't imagine my fandom without Maika. And Maika is a wrestler that makes me just happy. She makes me just so happy. And I hope that Maika's career is going on for forever. I don't want to deal with her retirement. I think that was legitimately break me. And I hope for the part of my fandom with Stardom that Maika is going to be the successful ace that she is now. It's insane to me. I'm sorry. I still can't put it really into words what Maika as ace is. If you told me that 3 years ago, before the GP in 2023, I would have called you insane. That Maika would have been the ace of Stardom. Well, the top babyface of Stardom, of course, with Kamitani, of course, being the big opposite. Insane. So that is pretty much my Maika part. I'm sorry, it went way too long and all of that, but Maika is just so a big part about my fandom that she deserves so much time on this. Maika is just part of the reason why I'm here. I don't think I would have done content like that if it wasn't for Maika. One of my first pieces, writing pieces, was on Maika. A lot of things I'm doing is indirectly about Maika. So thank you, Stardom, for making me introduced to Maika as a wrestler who shaped my online personality like no other wrestler ever did or ever will. She is part of my brand. She is what people recognize about me. And I'm just really thankful about this. And with that, my part on this anniversary special is over. I hope you enjoyed my part. It was a bit emotional. I think you especially noticed that with the Maika part. But I really enjoyed talking about Stardom's 15th anniversary and what the promotion means to me. But the video isn't over yet, as I've got 15 different guests joining me as they sent in a little audio that I will all play now. And I hope you enjoy all of them. Many different voices. They will talk a little bit about what Stardom means to them. So many different stories. I think you should listen to it. It's awesome. And with that, I hope you enjoy them. Let's go to the first guest.
Hello, Peps. Thank you for having me take part in this awesome video idea that you have put together. I'm really excited to give my own personal spin on Stardom as we celebrate 15 years of this company. 15 years of a promotion that helped bring Joshi, that helped bring women's wrestling to the forefront in a major, major way. And for me, that really saved my interest in pro wrestling as a whole. Uh, in 2020, I've talked about this many times, but I was as far ready to give up on wrestling as anyone. And thanks to some wonderful people, I found Stardom. A big reason for that was, of course, Io Shirai, now, of course, known as Io Sky. She had been my avenue to wanting to watch and learn more about Joshi, and it has obviously helped transform my life. A major part of what I do is creating in the Joshi space, and doing so many incredible interviews and so many things that I never could have imagined before I started watching Stardom. Stardom has given me some of my favorite professional wrestling moments of all time, some of my favorite shows of all time, matches of all time. Hell, my favorite wrestler of all time, that of course being Mayu Iwatani, the greatest of all time. It's hard to, I think, fully say how much the promotion and what it's done for me means, because it is a long answer. But I think based on this video and based on how many people have become fans, whether it be recently, whether it be a decade ago or so on, it proves that this promotion has been and will hopefully always be very special. Um, Joshi wrestling to me is the best wrestling in the world, and it's this company that made me see that. You know, Looking through it, if you asked me all of my favorite wrestlers and my favorite matches, so many of them are coming from this promotion, whether it be Mayu, Arisa Hoshiki, currently these days, the arenas of the world and how incredible the young talent are and all these different things. I've never had a more beloved time as a wrestling fan than watching Stardom from 2021 through the end of 2022. It was like a dream. It was some of the best, most amazing wrestling, storytelling, and just overall experience, especially during a time that had still so much uncertainty to what was going on in the world and so forth. Um, so just to think to that, and to think to where we are now and how big this company has gone, it's truly, truly remarkable and truly incredible. um Women's wrestling, I think, before Stardom really took off, was still, obviously going through the phase it did in America and so on. But now we live at a time where I think more and more it is being recognized in full force as the very best in all professional wrestling, like it's been for years now. Uh, I am grateful for what Stardom has given me. I'm grateful for what the many, many wrestlers that have gone through the Stardom doors have given me. And I'm grateful for what hopefully it will continue to give me. Um, you know, for those who don't know, I cover Joshi only. That's what I do these days. So it's just been a whirlwind. It's been everything and more. It's been my entire fandom over the past now 6 years and beyond. And I just think this idea was incredible, Peps, and hopefully this little video blurb gives you something to include, and hopefully it's what you were looking for. But before I get out of here, I'll just ask you all, if you haven't before, please check me out over on youtube.com/@ScottEWrestling. I'm going to have my own version of a Stardom 15th anniversary special up, that's just kind of me going through a longer look at my favorite matches and wrestlers and moments from the promotion's history. But please, please, please continue to support Peps. I love that he put this idea together. I think it's such an amazing idea, and I'm just happy to play a small part of it. So thank you, Peps, for having me, and congratulations to Stardom on an incredible 15 years. Happy anniversary.
Hi, my name is Lyric Swinton, aka at Lyric Wrestling. For those of you who follow me on social media, celebrating Stardom. Where do I begin? I really enjoy pageantry and wrestling. Like I love like how larger than life, wrestling can be, and I love everything that comes with it from the characters, especially like the bigger names feeling like titans in the ring. I love like the presentation of it all. I just love all of that. And I think that, but I feel like sometimes, like growing up, especially watching American wrestling, the pageantry of it all, a lot of times you have to sacrifice like the quality, in order to get that. And especially with women's wrestling, like there was very little, I think, at the intersection of those two things. So when I got into Stardom, it was really a revelation for me almost, of just like seeing like the first event that I had ever watched live, because I had seen some things on YouTube and I had seen some retro content, but the first thing that I had ever seen live was Dream Queendom 2022. And I just remember being so blown away by that show. You had Mina's return on it, coming back after the injury. And she came back as a part of Club Venus. She has this faction behind her. You have Julia versus Shuri after Julia was the 5-star Grand Prix winner. And, she wins the belt. And like her presentation was absolutely insane. Like every nobody had to tell me who the key players were. I could clearly see for myself. I thought the factions at that time were so cool. You had Donna Del Mondo, Stars had the heavy hitters, Queen's Quest, obviously. It was just so refreshing to see that. And I think that Stardom, for a lot of us who weren't, who didn't grow up around women's wrestling, be at that forefront, being able to get into Stardom and seeing what it meant to the scene, in Japan, but just in seeing women's wrestling in general, how far they've come, being able to place and sometimes even top awards, even here in the US for global publications. It just speaks to the testament of, I truly believe that quality will always, win in the end. It might not be as prominent as a WWE or AEW, but Stardom is just so important, and it's been so important to my fandom in general. And I think just for me, as somebody who covers international wrestling and was kind of like, I'm a rare person in the space who, prefers, the international and alternative scene, like from the media side, especially with like, some of the bigger publications. Watching Stardom has helped me in so many ways, because it's taught me as a woman what women's wrestling is capable of and what women in wrestling are capable of. And it's really expanded, my my view of wrestling in general. I think like a lot of, sometimes people say like, oh yeah, WWE, not WWE, sorry, AEW is like a gateway to watching other promotions like New Japan and CMLL, and like New Japan is like that in the sense of maybe you watch New Japan, then you start watching Noah, you'll start watching All Japan, you start watching DDT. Stardom is like that for women's wrestling for me. It's like like I remember All Star Grand Queendom 2023 and seeing all these people come in. Like I remember, don't get me wrong, that card was stacked. You had Mercedes on it and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. But I remember being so excited for Hash and Shuri. And so I started watching Sendai Girls off of that. And then, you eventually start watching Marvelous, and, eventually started watching so many of these other smaller promotions. Stardom is really a gateway and a window to the world. And I'm just really grateful to have gotten to experience it and to continue to experience it. I think like, seeing so many stars, I remember when they were rookies and now like, they're taking over the world. Shout out to Rena, who's one of my absolute favorites. And just seeing how so many of these people have continued, even if they're not in Stardom anymore, how they're making an impact on the rest of the wrestling world. And they wouldn't have been able to do that without Stardom. It was a very foundational point in their careers and foundational for this generation of women's wrestling. Stardom has affected the world. So thank you very much for listening to me talk about best women's professional wrestling.
Hi, I am Dylan Murray from the Stardom Quest podcast. Peps, my close personal friend, asked me to send something in to celebrate Stardom's 15th anniversary, and I, of course, obliged, even though he only gave me 5 minutes. Don't love the time limit, but I'll see what I can do. I first started watching Stardom in 2018, at the age of 15 years old. I've seen exactly half of Stardom's run in real time, and the first time I watched Stardom, it was because I had seen Hana Kimura on a Ring of Honor show, and I just thought she was the prettiest woman I'd ever seen, and I needed to watch her wrestle more. Little did I know I would become absolutely hooked as soon as I pressed play on my first Stardom World show. I fell in love with the company. I remember doing the Oedo Tai dance, learning the Oedo Tai dance in my room because I was bored and I was a nerd. I remember waiting patiently for Stardom World to upload new matches, and the first match that would upload on every show it felt like was a Rina versus Hina exhibition match because they were still too young to debut quite yet. And I just remember being so obsessed with it. And I've tried to figure out what this obsession with Stardom has been over my life. And I think a big part of it is authenticity. I've always felt like these wrestlers really buy in to what they're doing whenever they do it. And I respect that and I appreciate that. And it's something that I need in pro wrestling. But I also think it's the way the company is able to tell stories. And that's over a long period of time. I think most people will probably point to Tam Nakano and Sai Kamatani, a story that started in 2019, a few months after I started watching when Sai Kamatani first debuted. But you can look at it in so many different ways. I think the wrestlers that I just mentioned, Hina and Rina, are a great example. I started watching them when they were children, like shoot children. And now they're two of the most entertaining and exciting wrestlers on the entire roster. I think about Azumi. I remember the first time I saw Azumi, I was amazed that we were the same age, and I was a bit upset. I was like, wow, she's living her dream and she's great at it, and what am I doing? But in in the time since, I've just gone on to be so fascinated and excited and happy with her growth as a wrestler that I've been able to see this entire time. I even think about, some of the older wrestlers. I say older, they're not much older, but I look at wrestlers like Hazuki and Momo Watanabe, who had one of my first favorite Stardom matches in their Wonder of Stardom Championship match in 2018. And I look at how they've progressed to now, even without winning any additional major titles since that moment. I think about Hazuki and just her match with Sai Kamatani and her high speed title run and her match with Utami, and I mean her recent matches, her matches with Koguma and Meisera, and I feel this through line of she never stopped aiming for the top and aiming to be the most ruthless wrestler, to be the biggest killer in the company. And Momo, I mean, her white belt matches were great, but then you see the Shuri match, right? And you see the Mayu match in 2024 now, over a year ago, and you just think, wow, like these wrestlers have grown so much, but they also have just been such an integral part of my wrestling viewing over the past 7.5 years that I can't imagine having not found Stardom when I did, because it I said once on my podcast that wrestling is supposed to make you feel things above all else. And if it can do that, it's getting its job done in some way. And I feel like Stardom has made me feel every type of emotion that there possibly is, Inside Out 1 and 2. You know what I mean? It's hit every part of the spectrum. And I expect it to continue to do so. You know what I mean? I I love the company. I'm hoping for the best moving into the next 15 years for Stardom, and I'm just happy I've been along for the ride. Follow me on Twitter at xxichiban, 21 on the mic, number one on the heart, in the heart. I messed it up. Whatever. Ija.
Hello, I'm Alex from Stardom Quest. I was asked here by Peps to just talk about Stardom for its anniversary. Stardom, it really came around at a time that I was looking for wrestling to really captivate me. That's particularly women's wrestling. I had tried Sendai Girls, and for people who remember Sendai Global, it was a bit of a disaster trying to watch Sendai Girls, and I needed something that would be enjoyable and fun and had stories and had characters and was running full time. And so I remember watching Momo Watanabe versus Kagetsu, and it kind of just changed the trajectory of my fandom. There was no way I could see that match and not fall in love with this company and the wrestlers. And Kagetsu for a while was one of my favorites. I thought he was like the coolest wrestler alive for a while. Um, and I just got deeper and deeper into Stardom. I used to wait every day for the new Stardom World upload, whether it was the random rookie exhibitions to start a show or some tag match. Like, it was every day I was able to look forward to the new pre-match promos that would kind of give me an insight into the wrestlers, to the really fun wrestling, to the whatever they were doing. Like, it was just so fun, and it was just the perfect mix of what I like in wrestling. And it's kind of stayed that. Even at its worst, Stardom to me is one of the most enjoyable promotions because it does bring that kind of big fight feel, that emotional feel, that kind of stiffness and action to the ring. Like, it is just so enjoyable. And it was great to get to go back and kind of look into the past of Stardom. It's been home to amazing wrestlers since day one. Getting to go back and see wrestlers like Yoko Bito, getting to go back and see Yuzuki Aikawa, getting to go back and see even Hiromi Mimura, like people like that who you're just, even now you can go back and watch and they're so enjoyable, and they're just doing wrestling the way that I enjoy it. And I don't really know what I would have done without Stardom. Like, Stardom was what really hooked me and made me kind of embrace Joshi fully. I don't know if I ever would have been able to make that jump without Stardom there, because I just didn't enjoy the other full-time promotions as much, and the part-time promotions just weren't enough to kind of sink my teeth into the way I wanted to. And so, it's been 15 years. They're going from strength to strength, and I can only hope that they keep going up, because a good Stardom is good for everybody. It is still doing a lot of really cool and interesting things, and it is a place to go if you want wrestling that has all the stuff that pro wrestling needs. It's not just matches. It is like meaningful moments. It is, interpersonal relationships between the wrestlers. It is the occasional bit of fun and comedy. It is the different styles that you can see on display. It is a company that has brought so much good wrestling and to me and to everybody. And there's 15 years worth of great stuff there for people to watch. I would definitely implore you to go back and watch the Arisa Hoshikis of the world, and watch the early Mayu Itanis, and watch pre-retirement Saki Kashima, and just discover that this has been a company doing great stuff for a long time. And long may it continue. Long may Stardom keep doing well, because I don't know what my fandom would be like without Stardom. It really changed everything for me. So.
Hi, my name is Adriana, or at CosmicAndry_ on Twitter. I started watching Stardom in late 2022, very early 2021. Before that, I had only watched WWE and AEW. Stardom introduced me to a whole other world and showed me that there was better out there. I was so used to seeing women get like 5-minute matches or be an afterthought. So like seeing an all women's promotion where they got treated serious and like stars was so crazy to me. It was my introduction to Joshi wrestling and has completely shaped my taste in wrestling. Because of Stardom, I felt open to trying other promotions like TGPW or New Japan or Noah or All Japan, and like even the indies over there in Japan. It's influenced so much of my taste in wrestling now. It's given me my favorite wrestler, Natsupoi, and like my Twitter username at Cosmic Adri, which is a play on Cosmic Angels, which is my favorite faction. Starting out, what I liked so much about Stardom was the cast of colorful and unique wrestlers. But the wrestling is what hooked me, seeing all these badass women in beautiful gear kick each other's head in. The match that locked me in for life was Shuri versus Utami Hayashita at Stardom's Tokyo Dream Cinderella, where they went like 40 minutes. This was when I was still getting used to staying up at like 4 to 5 a.m. to watch like shows, so I was like half asleep at this point. But by the end of the match, I was like wide awake, and I was like in awe of what I just saw. And I was like, I can't believe I've gotten this long without like having this in my life. Now, just wrestling is my absolute favorite thing in the world. I just adore and admire the passion and intensity that these women have. And Stardom is still my favorite promotion now. It has some of the most talented women in the world, and I'd say the best wrestlers, the best roster out there. My admiration for this promotion has led me to try to get more eyes on the product. As you know, I urge my friends to get into it, and I've made a beginner's guide to Stardom for my blog to hopefully help any new fans who'd want to get into it. And I made that and I do this so hopefully I get to share something that's made my life so much better with other people. Stardom hosts a very special place in my heart, as it's what revolutionized my taste in wrestling. It's had such an impact on me and given me so many core memories, like going to bed as the sun rises on numerous occasions, or ugly sobbing over Tam Nakano's retirement recently, or being able to attend a few Stardom shows in the US and meet some of the roster, which I'm so grateful for, and I can't believe that's my life that happened. But I think I'm going to end it here. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, my ad is at cosmicadri_, or I also have a link to my blog if you'd like to check out A Beginner's Guide to Stardom. And yeah, I think I'm going to end it there. Bye, boy.
What's up, guys? It's Dylan Fox from the Eastern Lariat. I was so hyped when Paps messaged me and asked me to be a part of this, celebrating the 15th anniversary of Stardom, and I just have so many memories of this company. I was there from the start. I was a huge fan of Nanae Takahashi. Before Stardom even started, I was a fan of a group called Passion Red, and that ended with Nanae allegedly laying a beating on a certain Kana at the time, allegedly. And I was super hyped when the company started, and a lot's happened over the years. And obviously she was my kind of starting point to the company. I think we all have that one wrestler. Whether you were at the start, whether you followed someone's career, whether you came in later, either way, you probably found somebody that you loved and brought you into the company, right? Yuzupon was another one I always say is historically super underrated. She meant a lot to me as a fan, and I think pretty much everybody of that era would have no doubt to agree with me, pretty much. So she's had a lot of great matches, a lot of great memories. I love seeing her whenever she shows up, even in 2026, and she's just awesome. But really, the identity of the company to me, it's all these people that have left. I talked about Nanae. I talked about Yuzupon. When Yuzupon left, they said this company might die. I remember. When the Ghastly match happened, that's something a lot of people know. Nanae and Yoshiko, one of their biggest stars, the best wrestlers, left. They said it was the end of the company. When Io and Kairi, they left. That was the end. Hana Kimura's tragic death was so horrible and so painful for everybody who was a fan, and we still had to keep going on. Jungle Kiona left. All the people to Marigold that left. Isn't it amazing for this company to continue on despite a constant struggle? To see the rejuvenation of it through Saya Kamatani is unbelievable. They're back bigger than they ever were before, and bigger than anyone's ever been since the 90s. To see them capture fans from all over the world, whether it's guys, whether it's women, all sorts of countries, all types of fans, that's a really special company. Because a lot of times companies will really have their niche and attract a certain type of fan. With Stardom, they've grown to have all kinds of fans. And that shows you how special they are. And there have been a ton of great matches, and they're my favorite right now. I think if you listen to my shows, you probably know that already. But actually, I really have high hopes for it to get even bigger and better with the shining future they're building right now. So let's end it off with my favorite match in the moment I remember right now. And this is just off the top of my head, thinking about what stood out to me, what touched my heart, what grabs me, and what I'm thinking of. So for Stardom, I got to give it up to the match between Arisa Hoshiki and Junko Kiona for the white belt. That match was the clincher for me as her reign being the best white belt reign of all time. She overcame Yuzupon, overcame Kairi, overcame Momo Watanabe. And I just still consider to this day to be one of the absolute best title runs anybody's ever had that I've lived through. It's the first match that I always think about, and that always comes to mind when I think about Stardom, so I'm not surprised that was my pick. But that's one. In terms of a satisfying moment, it had to be Julia winning the red belt over Shuri at the year-end climax a couple of years ago. The tears, the emotion, the rawness, it was truly beautiful and still one of my favorite moments in all of wrestling, really, in the last 5, 6, 7 years. So, anyway, congratulations, Stardom. Happy anniversary. And over the years, I've loved every bit of the journey from the ups and the downs. I'm so glad I've been a part of it and gotten to watch it and share it with all the cool fans out there, too. So, from Nunai and the Yuzupon to the Daughters of Stardom to the Bushiroad era to the Kamitani run we're on right now, it's honestly given me so much, and I hope it has to everybody listening, too. Shine today, believe tomorrow. Once again, it's Dylan from the Eastern Lariat, and as always, you know I love you, especially if you're in the Jungle Assault Nation.
This is a bit of rambling about what Stardom means to me. I'm Jason, also known as String Six Splash, so thanks to Peps for putting this project together and inviting me to participate. I feel like this is a topic that I could talk about for hours. I love Stardom, but fortunately for all of us, there's a time limit. So what does Stardom mean to me? It means a lot of things. But at this moment, in a weird way, and I know this sounds melodramatic, Stardom kind of means that magic is real. There's a magic to how script and spontaneity combine to make Stardom what it is. To an extent, the situations are planned, the performers are prepared, and at the same time, the difficulty of the performance is real. The danger is real. So many of the emotions, the errors, the organic crowd reactions, not only are they real, but they play a particular role in telling the story. So like an illusionist, like a stage magician, Stardom is in the business of creating moments in time, spellbinding the audience, causing us either to believe in something, to buy in, or to question ourselves. Does Sayakami Tani really not remember her match with Saori Ano at Dream Queendom? Do Hanan and Mei Sarah really hate each other? What do you believe? And are you sure? And so much effort goes into the business of creating these moments in time. Not only the script, which is the plan, and the reality, which is the chaos, but the brutally hard work, the effort of several performers, referees, camera operators, sound and lighting technicians, various crew, commentators, seconds, a lot of other folks. There's an effort to control these moments as best as possible and amplify these moments as best as possible. At the core, Stardom tells stories about people trying to overcome struggle. But more than that, Stardom tells stories about how a person can become great, but only through the support of others around them. This notion of personal greatness, cultivated and made possible by group support, is something that I think Stardom emphasizes more than most. There's the faction focus that defines Stardom's roster, the system of training and mentoring. There's very real friendships that emerge. There's the support of live audiences and dedicated fans. And from the outside looking in, there seems to be a culture that emphasizes contribution and cooperation within a larger community. In the same way that Stardom blends a script and a reality together, Stardom also blends a personal identity and a group identity together. October 30th, 2025. It was in the script for Aya Sakura to pin Hanako and become a New Blood champion. It was also a moment of personal greatness. It was one of her character's biggest breakthrough wins. But the magic of that night was brought about by the reality connected to that moment in time. And the magic of that night was also brought about by the group support connected to Aya's personal greatness. To me, October 30th, 2025 was an example of magic. And to me, Stardom means that magic is real. If you found any of this rambling valuable, you can find me String 6 Splash on YouTube. It's the word string, the number 6, the word splash, or you can search YouTube for my Stardom series, and that's called Red Belt Radio. You can also find me, String 6 Splash, on Twitter and on Blue Sky. Thanks, Peps. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this.
Hiya, it's Katherine, and I must admit, I'm feeling pretty underqualified to be here talking about Stardom as someone that only actually started watching it back in 2023. My first ever Stardom show I watched was All-Star Grand Queendom, and it will come to the surprise of absolutely no one that my main motivation was, of course, to see Mercedes Moné versus Mai Iwatani for the IWGP Women's Championship. That was kind of how I really got into Joshi wrestling. It also really helped me just get into Japanese wrestling in general, which I feel like is one of those things you hear a lot of talk about it being stiffer and tougher and more vicious. And it's not really until you watch it that you kind of get it. I don't know. I feel like I watched that triple threat with Mercedes, Hazuki, and Azumi, and it kind of just changed something in my brain chemistry. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And admittedly, it's been one of my New Year's resolutions, like the last 2 years, to watch more and more Joshi wrestling. And I still don't watch as much Stardom as I want to. But there was something really beautiful about, especially as someone who got into wrestling through WWE and like the Women's Revolution and just approaching it from someone who's only really watched Western wrestling. I'm always complaining. If you've seen me on Twitter, you know I'm always complaining about women's booking and them not getting enough time or moments or support or, you know, the presentation being subpar to the men. And it was incredible to be able to watch a show where it was just only women working these incredible matches that were going so much longer than a lot of the stuff I was used to watching. And the whole presentation, the concept of these stables, and just seeing the crowd, seeing how many people turned up for women's wrestling. It was kind of insane to me. It blew my mind a bit in the best way possible. And, you know, I've always kind of wanted to go to a Stardom show since I really started watching bits and pieces. And I finally got to go to one last year. I went to Dream Queendom, and seeing Saya Kamitani, Saya Ida, to be able to see Suri and, you know, Natsupoi versus Suri live was absolutely insane. Like, I teared up. I think I actually might have cried during that show. It wouldn't have put my... I cry through a lot of shows, to be honest with you, but like there was something so beautiful. Like, I remember feeling in awe just being in that crowd. And it's the same feeling I get when I go to Eve, which is, for those of you who don't know, is a little independent promotion that's all women's wrestling over in the UK. And actually, I have Stardom to thank for getting me into it, because Stardom needs to start coming over to the UK. I never, ever, ever get to see half the names I'd love to see if it weren't for that Japan trip. But I went to my first Eve show because they had Konami and they had Momo Watanabe on the card, and that was like bucket list for me. And I went, and then I fell in love with British women's wrestling. And in a similar vein, Stardom was kind of my introduction into the whole of Joshi wrestling. You know, I wouldn't have really gotten into Marvelous or Sendai Girls or Marigold or TJPW if it weren't for that first introduction way back when. And it's just really cool to me that I can go back and watch, you know, in the same way that I've tried to watch a lot of like AJW and like old school Japanese wrestling in terms of women's wrestling, but to be able to go back and see the history of Stardom and see these names that pop up everywhere, you know, Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter, Piper Niven, Mai Iwatani, I mean, now she's in Marigold, Io, Sky, Kyrie, Thunder Rock. Going back and watching like these old Thunder Rock matches was insane to me. And, I just think there's something really beautiful about Stardom. And whilst I haven't been a fan for the longest time, I can't recommend it enough to people to go and watch more of it. I think, to be honest, in the West, we need more Joshi wrestling in our lives. We need more Stardom. But yeah.
What is happening, people? It's Jamie Ross here of Wrestle Purists. First of all, I'll give a big thanks to Peps for inviting me on to talk a little bit about World Wonder Ring Stardom's 15th anniversary. Now, when I think about Stardom as a promotion, I think the first thing that springs to mind is the growth and evolution of the company over these past 15 years. Stardom have been hit by their fair share of talent departure, they've faced tragedy, and there's been turmoil inside and outside of the ring on occasion. But throughout these past 15 years, what has also consistently been the case is that Stardom have showcased some of the absolute best professional wrestling on the planet. When you think about the era-defining figures in the company's history, you think about the likes of Yuzuki Aikawa, Nanae Takahashi, Yoshiko, Mayu Iwatani, Io Shirai, Kairi Hojo, Kagetsu, and the list could go on, and I could be here for hours. And eventually, that will bring me to the period that defined my fandom of Stardom, and that's the pandemic era. For many, the pandemic was an incredibly difficult time to follow pro wrestling. Most promotions ground to a halt. You had shows behind closed doors and a handful of clap crowds. But Stardom were an outlier. They were the only company that showed consistent growth throughout this period, and that is in massive part to, for my money, the most talented roster on the planet at the time. You had Mayu Iwatani, still the absolute best in the world. You had Utami Hayashi's incredible red belt run and Shuri's incredible ascent to that title, which included my favourite match in Stardom history, her 5-star GP final with Momo Watanabe in 2021. You had Azumi and Starlight Kid lighting up the high-speed division, and an era-defining rivalry between Julia and Tam Nakano, and so many more. And that has kind of propelled Stardom into the conversations that they find themselves today. When you talk about awards season and the likes of WWE, AEW, and New Japan in the race for the Promotion of the Year awards, Stardom now find themselves in that conversation. And I believe the pandemic era was really what pushed them into that spotlight that we see them in today. And of course, departures have continued to be a part of Stardom's history. You've seen the likes of Mayu Iwatani and Utami Hayashishita, and of course, Rossy Ogawa's exit that led to the formation of Marigold. And whilst I've had my issues with Stardom's recent trajectory in terms of their book, in 2025 was far from my favourite year of the promotion's history, it's hard to argue on the topic of growth and evolution, that everything surrounding Tam Nakano's retirement and the way that propelled Saya Kamatani into superstardom in terms of attendances shooting up and her Tokyo Sports MVP win, which was not only a historic achievement for Stardom, but for Joshi Wrestling as a whole. All of which has been a massive success for the promotion and leaves Stardom in a great place for 2026 to be a big year, particularly with the Tokyo Dome in sight. But to wrap things up in terms of what the promotion has meant for me over these past few years, Stardom, like I mentioned in the pandemic, really kept my passion for pro wrestling alive when so many other promotions were faltering. And that also led to me jumping into the content space in terms of writing articles and jumping on podcasts for Wrestle Purists. My first article was talking about Kairi's return to the promotion, and that led to everything I've been able to do in the space. But not only that, it's led to me speaking with and meeting so many incredible people, not only in the Joshi space, but Puro and pro wrestling as a whole. And so for that, I'm incredibly thankful. So, a massive happy anniversary to Stardom. Hopefully, another 15 years and beyond is to come with more and more success.
Hello, it's Lewis from Wrestle Purists, and Stardom to me is the first time that I'd really looked beyond WWE for wrestling across the world. I got into New Japan around the time of the first Kenny Okada match, but that kind of tailed off after about a year and a half, and it became like a background thing that I wouldn't check as often. So in 2022, I randomly came across the first Utami versus Shuri match on YouTube, and I'd heard of Stardom briefly before, so I decided to give it a shot, and it introduced me to a whole different style of wrestling, obviously with two wrestlers that I'd never heard of in a promotion that I hadn't really seen before. and I was immediately hooked because it completely blew me away. That match was incredible. And through research and through talking to people like Jamie Ross, I learned more about the roster, about the titles, about the structure, and everything sounded great. So around 2023, I decided to get on board. And particularly my first memory of Stardom, or like watching Stardom on my own, is through this 2023 Cinderella tournament. And through social media, I'd already formed a few connections to different wrestlers. So going into that event and future events, I'd got a connection to people like Natsupoi, Hazuki, Tekla, people I thought were cool, and people that in the ring were cool. So people that were hooking me into the promotion, like making me go back and watch another show and another show. And through consistently turning up to those wrestlers that had intrigued me, I found a whole load of wrestlers that I now love. And through watching Stardom, I genuinely found perhaps my favourite wrestler of all time in Natsupoi. And we really need to get on that Natsupoi red belt agenda for 2026. I'm so serious. She needs to get that red belt push very soon. You're getting impatient waiting for it, honestly. But more seriously, I think Stardom is great for the scene. I think Stardom is great for fans. I think it can be the perfect gateway, like it was for me, into a whole different world of wrestling. Like, as much as I do still keep up with American wrestling and AEW and such, I think Stardom was my introduction to Joshi wrestling, which I now think is the best wrestling in the world. And it's given me a platform to be more open and to accept like different promotions, different wrestlers, and give everything a shot. Obviously, Stardom itself has seen a lot of changes in even just the 3.5 years that I've been watching. If my maths is correct on those years, and even through that, through the different iterations, there's always something to like. There's always something to watch. There's always a good match on most shows. Like Stardom is sort of perfect for new fans, casual fans to try and find something to bridge the gap and get them towards the world of Joshi. Maybe from there they can go towards Marigold or TJPW or anything in Japan. Like, it worked for me. It was the perfect gateway. And, I'm really thankful for getting into Stardom. It kind of changed who I was as a wrestling fan, and it made it, it really showed me what is out there if you look for it. And of course, being from the UK, the shows start at like 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m. It's great. I wake up, watch the wrestling. I get good wrestling in the morning. Stardom is so perfect for convenience for me personally as well. I'm wearing a Stardom hoodie right now. Like, this promotion has genuinely made my life a lot better, a lot more interesting. Like, it's given me so many more things to look forward to and hope for. And obviously, the main thing I'm hoping for right now is that's the red belt push. I will not give up. We will get there. We will get there. But yeah, I'm grateful for Stardom. And speaking of Natsupoi, I did Peps is allowing us to plug something in these voice notes, and I must say that when Natsupoi won the white belt in 2024, I was able to write a feature about her win. So go to WrestlePurist.com, and it's called Natsupoi: A Fairy's Rise. I think you should read it. Sorry about the shameless plug, but yeah, here's to the future of Stardom. I hope it's great. I'm really pulling for them to have a great year this year. Yeah, thanks. Bye. Or should I say bye, Poi?
What's up, everyone? Matt Turner here from the Stardom Cast on the World of Joshi podcasting network. And I'm here to talk about what, in my opinion, is the best wrestling company going today, World Wonder Ring Stardom, on their 15th anniversary. So kind of my origin story was I was on the planet Krypton and I was bitten by a radioactive spider. No, I'm just kidding. That's not my origin story. Little comic book fun for you. No, I was always aware of Stardom. Just being working on the independents for as long as I have, I would always hear about great matches from wrestlers like Mayu Iwatani and Kairi and Io and eventually Momo Watanabe and Julia. But where I first really started watching Stardom was I was watching a New Japan show back in the summer of 2021, and I saw Shuri, and I was completely blown away by what I saw, what just the intensity and the realism that is Shuri. So I went and did a deep dive on Shuri, found out that she was a UFC fighter, King of Pancrase fighter, and she was just coming off a match with Utami Hayashishita back at the 2021 Cinderella Finals that was getting a lot of buzz. So I I did the deep dive. I went down the rabbit hole and I started watching more Shuri, more Utami, and then I was watching Momo Watanabe and Azumi and Starlight Kid, Tam Nakano. I mean, the list of great wrestlers in 2021 just goes on and on and on. And then about 4 or 5 months later, Rob Goodwin, handsome Rob Goodwin, hired me on as his co-host, as part of the Stardom cast. And it's been pretty much ever since then, since the fall of 2021, we've been pretty much riding this crazy train that is Stardom and the Stardom cast until current day. And one of the many great things about Rob is Rob is in the UK. He's in England. I'm over here in the United States in the Northeast. And Rob has quickly become one of my best friends. We talk all the time. We're trying to raise the prestige and get more people watching Stardom. So Rob and I, we had the opportunity to be able to do a live podcast in Philadelphia a couple years ago after the Stardom show at the legendary ECW Arena, which was just really awesome. We had listeners from all over the world come to that live podcast. We actually had our own limited edition Stardom cast beer, which was just really tremendous. And just about a few weeks ago, we actually just got back from Japan. We were able to go to Japan to cover shows from not only Stardom, but Marigold as well, which was really, really cool. I mean, a lot of the really cool things about being in this Stardom universe, this Stardom fandom is we've gotten to meet people from around the world that absolutely love Stardom, not just here in the States, not just in England. You have Japan, Finland, Germany, Scotland. I mean, it's really, really cool just to see the reach that Stardom has had and continues to have on the wrestling scene, which is just always great. And we always hear people that watch Stardom. Maybe they were going through a tough time, like a passing of a parent, and they'll go and watch Stardom to make them feel better. They lost their job, and they're going watching matches from like Tam Nakano or Julia or Sai Kamatani or Azumi, and it just makes them feel better. So it just really goes to show you the reach and the help that Stardom is doing. I mean, it is a company, again, folks, that I've been watching nonstop and reporting on nonstop for the last 5 years, and it's constantly getting better. I mean, the great wrestlers right now in 2026 in Stardom, I mean, there's some of the best wrestlers in wrestling right now. The Micahs, the Sai Kamatanis, the Momo Watanabe, Starlight Kid, Sori Anu, I mean, Kunami, the Saida, Hanan. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So, Stardom, happy 15th anniversary. Let's continue to grow what I think is the best wrestling company in the world, bar none. Thanks for listening, guys. Keep on keeping on. Keep supporting us over here at the Stardom Cast. Keep supporting Stardom. Stay positive, guys, and take care.
Hello, my name is Rob Goodwin, and I run a weekly Stardom podcast called the Stardom Cast alongside my friend and co-host Matt Turner. And my first impressions really of Stardom were that I had none. I was quite ashamedly sort of single track mind in terms of wrestling, where all I knew was the WWE really, until about 2019, where I was disenfranchised with the weekly TV and monthly pay-per-view model. And my friend and former co-host of the Stardom Cast, Chris, pointed out Stardom, said you need to check this out. And I'd sort of put it off, and then I'd seen Mayu Iwatani, who, of course, everyone knows as the icon of Stardom. And my first exposure to her was actually against Kelly Klein at the G1 Supercard, which wasn't her finest hour, but there was something about her style of wrestling, even in that match, where I now know she was actually injured, really drew me to that style of wrestling. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give Stardom a shot. Let's watch it. Let's see what this is all about. And so the tail end of 2019, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to watch the year-end climax show. And the main event was Mayu Iwatani versus Kagetsu for the World of Stardom Championship. And it was breathtaking. It was fantastic. Tuned in for the next show. The next big Korakuen show was obviously the 9th anniversary show, Mayu versus Momo. And that was it from there. It really did cement my love for this promotion. It's sort of a dedication to a wrestling promotion that I've never really felt before. I've always been more of a casual fan, but there's always been this vibe with Stardom, especially pre-Bushi Road, where it just draws you in. It really does. And whether that is the Io Shirai and Mayu Iwatani trilogy, which I'm sure many people before me and after me will mention on this show, anything that Hazuki does in the ring, Utami and Syuri for more recent fans, for Kairi and Io for earlier on, Meiko Satomura and Io Shirai, there are so many matches that when you start going back into this canon of Stardom matches that you're like, this is incredible. This really is incredible. The threshold for match quality was the first thing that sort of drew me in, and then everything else from the characters to the storylines and, I don't know, that connection that I had with the company really just sort of spiraled and sort of became this snowball going down a mountain. And it's got to the point now where even during the pandemic, which was a horrible time for so many of us, I was so locked in to this promotion. Even without the roar of the crowd, I was hooked into this promotion. And I've got so much to thank it for. It's introduced me to friends for life, even Matt, who, of course, I do this podcast with, people who we met in Japan, friends who we've made online and friends of the podcast. It's taken me the entire way around the globe, spending more money than I'd like to mention on going to watch them. I've written books about this promotion. And on a more personal note, I found Stardom at the perfect time during a horribly dark period of my personal life. And I'm not going to get too much into that, but to find something that I could hook on to, that I could enjoy, that I could escape to, arguably means more to me than anything else. So if you aren't already a fan of Stardom, check it out. If you are a fan of Stardom, continue to check it out, because the horizon looks amazing. It really does, with a Tokyo Dome show on the horizon. So check out the Stardom cast. If you haven't already, it'd be great to for you to check us out. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Velkej Bracha, and I'm a Stardom fan. And I have been Stardom fan now for almost 10 years. I think I started watching the first show of Stardom I saw chronologically was the US tour with Freedom and Act and Chris Wolf. And that was like second match ever of Shayna Baszler's. I was cheerleader Melissa Taya in the main event against Io Shirai. But actually the first match, or first show that I saw, was the show that has the freeway for the... No, not the freeway, the high-speed title match between Kagetsu and Mayu Iwatani. I have watched that match it's one of my most rewatched matches, because those two wrestlers mean a lot to me and to my fandom. Mayu Iwatani's match against Io Shirai 2016 was the first match that I felt the need to see live as it was happening, because I needed the results so very badly. I was hitting F5 on the Twitter, refreshing the Stardom hashtag, and the people that I knew were in the building, waiting for a VR Stardom account to upload the result to see if Mayu Iwatani is able to defeat Io Shirai and punish the insult that Io Shirai gave her and the betrayal that she did to her. I did not get that, of course, back then. And that basically was 2017 was my first year that I felt that I watched wrestling live. And that match, specifically that match, made me realize that live wrestling is the best wrestling. Like being there with other people, being there teetering on the edge of not knowing who's going to win, and the decision being there just out of the reach. It's the mystique of pro wrestling is the live wrestling experience. I'm not much for retro wrestling. I like wrestling at the moment. I think the wrestling is one of those ephemeral art forms that work looking back, but that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to be in the moment. And I think that through these 10 years of being Stardom fan, I've been rewarded and punished for my fandom multiple times over and over again. And to bring it back to the present, 2025 was the best year for me as a fan of Stardom. It started with Azumi versus Mai Iwatani in the Tokyo Dome. It continued with Momo Watanabe winning in the Tokyo Dome. It went on to one of the best matches that I've ever watched live in Korakuen Hall, with Tam Nakano and Saya Kamitani, where I realized that I will be there in person to witness Tam Nakano retiring, which was like one of the big things that my fandom was founded on, to be there live for Nakano's retirement, to see her gone forever. And I was able to do that because I booked flight and hotels before that show happened. And when the match finished and Saya Kamitani told Tam Nakano that she wants her to vanish from this world, I realized that, yes, I will get to see her retire in the Yokohama Arena. And that Yokohama Arena was, again, one of the most rewarding experiences that I have had live. Tam Nakano retirement, one of the last matches for Meiko Satomura, Shuri winning the IWGP title by beating Mayu, Azumi in the semi-main event. All of that worked for me so very much. And then in summer, Momo won the 5-star, which also, again, 8 years of waiting for that, rewarded. Stardom is the best for me. Stardom is my wrestling promotion.
So I was introduced to Stardom in early 2020. The first match I watched was Mayu Iwatani versus Takumi Iroha, and I was blown away by the intensity and the fast-paced action. From then on, I fell in love with Stardom's roster, the characters, the storytelling, and the hard-hitting wrestling. Stardom has increased my appreciation for women's wrestling and opened my eyes to the amazing world of Joshi wrestling. Personally, it's helped me make new friends online and grow my blog, Dropkick Media. This past month I went to Japan for Wrestle Kingdom Week, and I had the best experience of my life. That likely doesn't happen if I didn't start watching Stardom. My favourite memory of the promotion is watching Saya Kamitani grow into the massive star she is now, with the highlight being the incredible match with Tam Nakano at All-Star Grand Prix last year. The emotions I felt from that match is what wrestling is all about. So I am very grateful for Stardom and the impact it's had on me, not just as a wrestling fan, but also as a person.
This is CM Venus, big Joshi fan from Washington, D.C. in the U.S., and I'm so proud that Stardom has made it to their quinceañera, their 15th birthday. In Latin American culture, quinceañeras are coming-of-age ceremonies where girls become women, and I feel like that's a pretty good way to reflect on Stardom as a whole, especially when we have seen talents that have been here for quite a long time evolve into these strong, powerful women that they are now, and that we will continue to see with the rookies and newer talents that are coming into their own. I have been a fan of Stardom for a long time. Not quite since the beginning, but I was there before Bushi Road, when they were doing promos before their matches, when all they had was like $15 to print out that Stardom banner, wallpaper. It wasn't even that. It was more like a plastic tablecloth kind of thing draped over a wall where they would all cut their promos and a dream. And to see Stardom as it is now, globally recognized, globally respected, because when people think Stardom, they think this is the best of the best. These women that are here are the best in the world, and if I want to improve, I need to go there. That is how Stardom is seen. Stardom is essentially the top of the top standard, and I'm so proud to have seen it become this. I'm so proud to also just see the evolutions of different factions, the formations of other factions. I will always hold Oedo Tai deep in my heart when Natsu Sumire was in it, when Chris Wolf was in it, when Hana, bless her soul, was in it, when Tam Nakano was managed by a panda. Which I genuinely wonder how many people that watch Stardom now and look on Tom's legacy knew that. It's so hard to pick a favorite moment just because there are so many. But due to recent events, and for obvious reasons, I would say one of the biggest moments for me was essentially Saya officially turning heel and pulling Micah away from winning the belt in her match, and everyone being shocked by it. That is probably one of my favorite moments, because that's when you see that's where we essentially got the powerhouse that we have now in Saya Kamitani. And I always believed she would be a good heel, which is even funnier when you realize, people were kind of doubting her ability, but I knew she could do it, and she has blown it out of the water. And I am so happy to see how beloved she is, how she's making history, how she was able to retire her own predecessor. That is incredible. And I can't wait to see more moments like that and other groundbreaking achievements that this company and its wrestlers will be able to make. If anyone wants to know my thoughts on wrestling in general, feel free to follow me on Substack under CM Venus, no underscore there. Ciao!
To end this video, I want to say thank you for the guests who all sent in a great message, who all told their own story, how Stardom impacted them. And I thought when I went through all of them and edited them, I was really impressed. Really cool to see how many different kind of voices put on such a great video. And I hope you all enjoyed this video. Leave a like and comment down below. It was a video that took a lot of effort to put into, especially the editing, but also the recording. I often re-recorded some things and all of that. And please support all of my guests. I will link everything they have in terms of Twitter and everything like that down below. Check them all out, give them support, show them love. I think they all deserve it. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let's hope for another 15 great years of Stardom. Bye-bye.